Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about the film The Coward, which was produced in India in 1965. A screenwriter, he was driving through the country because he wanted to have more material, the so-called local color, so he could write a film in the future. However, when he was driving through a city, his car was broken and it wouldn't be fixed in that day, probably just on the following day or in some days. So a guy who was around him volunteered to give him some shelter for the night. And when the screenwriter arrived in the house of this guy, he realized that he had already met the wife of this guy before, and the wife of this guy who was offering him shelter, this woman used to be his girlfriend during college days. She was wealthier than he was, but she loved him very much. However, she lived with her uncle, who didn't approve of the romance. Someday she arrived in his house and told him that her uncle was transferred to another city and that he was forcing her to go with him, so he would finally finish with her romance that she didn't approve. And then she proposed to her boyfriend that she wanted to get married with him. She wouldn't mind if they would have some hardships in the beginning. She would find a job and he would find a job too, and they would try to have a life together, have their own family and everything. However, the guy, he was a coward and he didn't want to marry his girlfriend. And then it was the end between them. And this was many years before. Then, all of a sudden, the guy became a screenwriter and got to meet again his former girlfriend in the most unexpected way. Her current husband, he had no idea about it. And then the screenwriter wanted to talk to his former girlfriend very much. She was polite with him, but distant and cold, very formal, because after all, they haven't met in years. She had a husband already. And then the screenwriter told her that he suffered a lot with what happened and that he loved her. He didn't even have time to ask for her forgiveness. But now he was ready, and if she wanted to leave her husband, he would get married with her. And of course, the woman didn't say anything because she was married, apparently happy. She had her consolidated life. And then, all of a sudden, a former boyfriend appears out of nowhere, and he had his chance, his opportunity to marry her. But because he was younger, more inexperienced, I think he was scared with the responsibility, and it was him who refused to marry. And it was because of that their relationship ended. She had to move to another city with her uncle, then she got married, and life continued to everyone. And then he said that he couldn't get married, he couldn't fall in love with any woman again. And then she said it wasn't her fault that it didn't happen. And of course that she didn't want to talk to the screenwriter too much for not upsetting her husband. Then on the following morning, still not knowing about the connection between his wife and the screenwriter, the owner of the house, he offered him an excursion around the neighborhood to show him the place, and his wife went with him. Then the screenwriter took every opportunity he could to be alone with the woman, to say his mind to her, and then he gave her a piece of paper saying, if you want to live, you can go with me, and so on. She didn't reply. And then, already in the night, he asked her for some sleeping pills because he couldn't sleep because of all this unexpected situation. She gave him her sleeping pills. She told him not to take more than 2 because it could be bad for him. And then he said yes. Okay. On the following morning, when the owner of the house showed the screenwriter the place, he also got to know that the screenwriter's car wouldn't be finished that day. It would take longer than expected. Then the screenwriter decided to take a train and leave the city without his car. He would pick up the car later. It was when he gave the paper to the woman, to the wife of the other guy, to ask her if she wanted to leave her husband. He would be in the train station, and he gave the exact location and time. On the following day, when the screenwriter was leaving, he was waiting for his train, and then the woman showed up. And when we think that she wanted to leave her husband and go away with him, she asked the screenwriter about her sleeping pills because it was not possible to buy those sleeping pills in the neighborhood and that she was needing the pills. Then the screenwriter gave it to her, then she took them and walked away. So she didn't leave her husband. Actually, throughout the film, there was no indication that she would really leave her husband. It's interesting film because we can see things from the perspective of the screenwriter who left his girlfriend many years before because he didn't want to marry her. On the other hand, we don't know much about what was on the mind of the woman, but it's hinted throughout the film that she wouldn't leave her husband and that she was pretty happy with the life she was having, and that her feelings for her old boyfriend no longer existed. At least this is what we can infer in the film. About the screenwriter, he was completely confused, puzzled with everything. And about the husband of the woman, the guy who gave shelter to the screenwriter, he never knew about the connection between his wife and the screenwriter. He remained friendly with the screenwriter throughout the film. He entertained him, and he was a very good host, and he had no idea, and nobody told him anything. And then both the former boyfriend and girlfriend, they went to their separate ways, and that's it. It's a nice film. The vibe, even though it's a film made in India, somehow it reminded me a little bit of Nouvelle Vague films. And it's a film that only talks about that moment. The screenwriter met his former girlfriend, he was puzzled, he tried to kind of recover something he left in the past, but it didn't happen. And then they went to their separate ways once more. Life moved on, and we don't know if they will ever meet again. It's a nice film. It shows how things in life can go away, how time passes and things change, sometimes beyond repair. And it can see how feelings, they can be tricky to us, how they can make us confused and disturbed. And we can see the coincidences of life, some stuff that we could never predict that they actually happen. And it's a nice film. It's around 70 minutes long, and it's a film easy to understand, and the acting and the plot is very reserved, very mental, and it's very relaxing for nowadays audiences to see. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you!